So, hello and welcome to this course on the medicine wheel. It's a bit odd. It's like I'm talking into a void. Normally, I'm used to talking to a gathering of people on Zoom or whatever, but I think I'll manage it. I think we'll be okay, and I think we're going to have a good time. It's going to be experiential. I mean, there'll be plenty of information in this course. It's based on my book, The Medicine Wheel, which I'm sure you've seen. I'm not sure if you're getting a mirror image of it or not. That's what I'm seeing when I hold it up. And just to my left or right, that's the painting of it, which a friend who came on my original course did. Yeah, and the book, it's got just about everything. I think about everything on it because the medicine wheel is the whole universe. It contains everything, and yet also it's you. It's a way of describing ourselves, a way of relating to ourselves. But of course, we are the universe, so it is both you and the universe. This little self we have that we get so attached to, it's really quite fragile. There's something much bigger that's trying to live through us, and hopefully we'll be finding that a bit more as the course proceeds. So I don't know how many sessions there's going to be. I don't know how long each one will run, because if you like, I want to let the spirit take care of that. There's a friend of mine, he says the worst workshops he's ever run are the ones he's had planned out in advance. And also a friend, he's a Native American, traditionally trained teacher. He used to do storytelling, but he didn't have his stories planned in advance. He would turn up, people would turn up, and he'd get them to ask questions about what was going on, what was important for them at the moment, what they wanted answers for or guidance on. And they'd do that, it'd be question after question, and then eventually a story would occur to him in response to how the actual audience was and what people wanted. And so he'd then tell a story and he'd expound it and all the meanings of it and everything like that. And he's a very good storyteller too. And so that's the kind of spirit in which they work. It's more spontaneous. You didn't have courses. Yeah, you'd probably have an apprentice who said, "Oh, come along, I'm doing a sweat lodge. Can you carry this? Can you carry that? You know, etc., etc." And you pick stuff up as you go along. So it's quite a different way of learning, which is why I want to try and keep this course experiential. Although, as I say, there will be some good ideas in it as well, because also I love ideas. So the medicine wheel, at its simplest, is just 4 stones. That's all you need. And I'd like you to make your own medicine wheel to be around and to work with during this course. And I want you to take your time over this course. I don't want you to listen to this one, not really, and then go straight on to the next one. I want you to give it a few days or a week and just live with what we've covered in this opening introductory session. So I'll just say a little bit about the medicine wheel, what it is, so you've got some idea what I'm talking about, and then I'll take a step backwards to talk more generally about context for it and what gives me the right to talk about it. As a non-Native American who hasn't had any traditional training. Anyway, I've got one in my garden and I took a photograph of it earlier, and that is it there. Can you see it? So the light, it's 4 stones. There's a black one, a yellow one, a red one, and a white one. You don't need to paint them. You just need 4 stones, one in each direction. East, south, north, and west. You can usually work out where east is by where your local church points. My church points that way. That's east, so I know where the east is. You don't need to paint them. You just need 4 stones. That's all you need. It's in some ways, the simpler the better. And each of those 4 stones is a direction. And each of those directions has a power and a lot of associations, correlations, correspondences with each direction. So each direction has an animal, has a time of day, a time of life, a colour. You can keep listing them off. and most importantly, an element of fire, earth, air, and water. And it's that elemental association that I want to look at and that we'll be exploring primarily in this course, because those four elements are a way of understanding ourselves and our relationship to the world. And they're universal, kind of, because we have them in Europe. We have an old tradition of them here. Fire is like imagination and inspiration. You probably know all this already. Water, well, it's like emotion, isn't it? It's a kind of container. Earth, well, that's the body, obviously, and the world itself. And air, well, that's the mind, which is our ability to be objective, to stand back, to have perspective. Astrology uses these four elements. I'm also an astrologer. Now, here's the deal. If you buy my medicine book and you leave a genuine rating for it on Amazon, I will give you a free reading. I'm trying to build my shop front over the long term. It's a bit of a specialist market, but I just want it to get out there. So yeah, astrology uses those four elements in pretty much the same way. I don't know if you like Jung at all, but Jung divides the human into thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Well, that's fire, earth, air, and water. Again, that old tradition. Jung looked like he's coming up with something new, but all he's doing is restating something that's very old. So we are, in talking about these four elements, we are tapping into something ancient and old that we already know. And in a way, that's the purpose of teaching. It's not to inject knowledge into the pupil, so to speak. It's to help you find your own guidance, trust your own wisdom that comes from within. So when you look at the medicine wheel, you can go to it with an issue about your life, and you can ask, well, what's the south saying? The water, the emotion. What's that telling me? What's the perspective of the north telling me? What's the inspiration of the east telling me? And so on. And you can hang out around it and you can come to understand yourself, get perspective, move issues on in your life. So it's very useful like that. So in a way, I've just given you a very quick introduction to the medicine wheel and how you can use it, and in a way that I hope connects to what you know already. Now, you can make the medicine wheel very complex. You can have about 20 stones in it, quite easily. And you add in correspondences, you add in dimensions of existence. You can add in the ancestors, you can add in the dream, you can add in karma, you can add in all these sorts of things. And that does add to it. Adds nuance, adds complexity, adds what you can say. But then you also lose something. When you lose the simplicity like that, you often lose a measure of the symbolic relationship. Because when I talk fire, well, the fire is also the sun. Water is also the rain. The earth is, well, soil. And air is the wind. Yeah? We immediately have an experiential relationship with these things. It's out there in the world, and yet they're within us too. It's so simple. It's so immediate. It's so experiential in that way. It's not a complex thing. It's simple. That's its beauty. And yet you can generate all sorts from it. It works on all sorts of levels. Ceremonial, psychological, philosophical, divinatory, all these different levels that it works on. So where are we going? Yes, the simplicity of it. I talk about this with astrology. It's a good example. I say, well, let's just base everything around the sun and the moon because that's something we all experience. We all have an ancient relationship with the sun and an ancient relationship with the moon that has built up power over the millennia. Well, maybe it's lost a bit recently because we've come out of relationship with the natural world. And that's something I'm going to be talking about a number of times, is the importance of coming back into relationship with the natural world and the way that it can speak to us and make us balanced and make us feel whole, make us feel sane again, because we know who we are, we know where we belong, because we are nothing but the natural world. So yes, in astrology, I concentrate on the sun and the moon, because when you have powerful, they're the two big objects in the sky. And so they speak through us. If we sit with them, we feel them. And once we feel something, it can speak through us in this non-rational, intuitive kind of way. And it's that kind of knowledge that, in a way, is central in the medicine world. Everything else is an aid to that. Our mind is an aid to that real knowledge, yeah, that intuitive, that direct knowledge, if you like, which is our whole being seeing. Our emotions, they're also a guide to that intuitive way. Because sometimes our emotions describe accurately, and sometimes they're way out if we're feeling paranoid or angry or something, and it's an art, but I'll come to that when we talk about the South. So, yeah, I gave the example of the sun and the moon. So it's the same with these four directions. We know south, east, west, and north. And we know those elements, particularly in the form of the sun, the rain, the soil, and the wind. There's something we can all feel. And so between sessions on this, I'll be wanting you to go outside sometimes and just experience those elements. It's something we can easily forget to do. We don't need to do an awful lot of it. Just remembering it once a day for a few minutes, that'll do. Because those elements, they are who we are. We are nothing but that. The natural, it's not like consciousness is an add-on. The world is conscious as well, in my view. Well, I experience it as such. I think if anyone says it's not conscious and that it's dead, the onus is on them to prove it's not. The basic assumption is that it is. That, in other words, it has a subjective dimension as well as an objective dimension. The objective dimension of me is this body. The subjective dimension of me is the consciousness. But they're intertwined. You can't separate them. They're one thing. It's just a convenience to separate them in that sort of way. So it's very simple. I might make it more complex at the end, but I want to get that simplicity established first, so that we have a felt sense of the medicine wheel. That's what I want us to have more than anything to start with, is a felt sense. Sun, rain, soil, and wind. They're great, aren't they? They just feed you. You relish them. Do you ever do that? You go outside, you go for a walk. You're in the middle. I mean, I live on Dartmoor, which is fantastic for this because I can get high up, tremendous views, no one else around, and it sorts everything out. I mean, I don't have to do any big deal about talking to nature and all the rest of it. I just enjoy it. Just enjoy being out there. I appreciate being out there. And it sorts everything out. I come into balance because we are natural. And even dividing the world up like we do with the medicine world into those four elements, even that is an artificial division because nature is just one whole. And we discover that wholeness that we are through coming into relationship with it and being it when we're out in nature. So it's a wonderful thing to do. I've often thought, we go on camps or whatever, and we're going to do a sweat lodge or whatever fantastic thing it is and hear all these teachings. But the main thing is just getting out there in the country, camping for a few days. That does half the work. That just changes us. Nature is a great alchemist. She gets us back in balance. We don't need to do anything. We just need to be out there and remembering her, enjoying her. Maybe 5% of the time, because the rest of the time we get caught up in our heads. I mean, you've probably tried to meditate and you probably know what happens. Our minds are off, and then we might struggle and try and, force it in line. And it won't be forced. Our minds won't be forced. But if you can just remember 5% of the time when you're out there on your walk, oh yeah, look at that tree. Yeah, just feel that grass, that soil. Yeah, those clouds, and just be with them. It sorts everything out. That's all we're doing really with the natural, with the medicine wheel, is just coming back to the natural world. So in the coming sessions, I will be going into each element individually and spending several sessions on each and talking about their interrelationships. But this session is the more general introduction. So, having given you some rough idea of what it is we're talking about, oh yeah, no. I will say a bit more about the medicine wheel first. Just practically, please get yourself 4 stones, and you can have them outdoors. If you've got a garden, have them outside, or have them on a little altar, um, or something in your house. You can pick them up and put them away if you haven't got a permanent spot. But then visit it at least once a day. Come into relationship with it, and also here's what to do: talk to it. Um, Talk about whatever's going on in your life. Give thanks for all the things that work in your life. That's what we forget to do as humans. Any indigenous ceremony begins with giving thanks, just for the roof over our heads, for our food. In our culture, we might struggle to get by, but basically, nearly all of us, we've got a roof over our heads and enough to eat. We give thanks for that. The earth has provided that. We can give thanks for our health. We can give thanks for our relationships with people and our friends and our children, and so on. And also you can talk about the things that are bothering you. You can ask for help with that. So do that once a day. And it's a magical thing because you end up coming from your heart eventually when you do that, and you find out what's really going on. And the medicine wheel can act as a locus to that. The great spirit, if you like, that's behind it, that is the universe, who loves us, who wants to take care of us because we are her. And I'll talk about this again when we come to prayer, which is probably in the West. So I just want to say a bit about my qualification to do this. Right. First of all, this is not a traditional exposition of the wheel. Ooh, I'll just bring that painting more in. I want to make sure I'm looking at you properly as well. Can't do both. Anyway, I have received no traditional training in the medicine wheel. This is completely my own rendition, my own reinvention of the wheel. No one quite knows where it comes from. They reckon they come from the Americas, obviously. They reckon it started off somewhere in the Central Americas, maybe Mexico, and has moved northwards. And there's lots of different wheels. That one I showed you is one particular one. I mean, they all have north, south, east, and west, but then they'll have different elements and different colours associated with each direction. I'm just introducing you to one particular one. And the reason I use it is because that's the one I was taught. So I just go with what comes to me. I trust with what comes my way. And the good thing about that is that you can't get too dogmatic about it because there's lots of different versions of the wheels. Don't get me wrong, people will get dogmatic about it. People get dogmatic about everything because they want certainty. And we'll talk about that in the north. But really, we can be open and we can be flexible about this. And you'll probably find some Native Americans going, no, you Europeans, you can't possibly talk about it. You're stealing from us. It's cultural appropriation. Other Native Americans will go, no, please share it. Humanity needs this wheel. And they've each got their reasons for doing it. And I've met both types in my time. And well, I'm running with it. I don't think I could stop myself from running with it because I do love the medicine wheel. I learnt it off a guy called Leo Rutherford. And he learnt it off a guy called Harley Swiftier. And he learnt it off a guy called Hyomeus Storm. Those two were both Native Americans, kind of. And they both had those last two. They both had some. Leo Rutherford's English, but these other two, well, there's all sorts of stories about them. They definitely had something. They definitely had something to transmit. And yet there's all sorts of stories about them as well, where you go, I wouldn't go near someone like that. So sometimes it's a bit mixed with teachers. You can actually genuinely learn a lot from them, but you also got to be a bit wary. And they can betray you. And sometimes we learn as much from that betrayal as we do from the actual teaching. Yeah. But I'll say a bit more about that when I talk about teachers, what that's about. So yeah, that's the sort of lineage, and I first encountered it in 1997. I was doing a course on shamanism, shamanic journeying, and Leo, who's one of the guys running it, he had this thing called the medicine wheel. I thought I've got to learn about that. It just grabbed me, and so I went on a long course with it then in the late 90s. I've been around it about 25 years now, and then I wanted a refresher one a few years ago, and then I taught a couple of long courses on it on Zoom during the lockdown, and I realised, oh, I've got quite a lot to say. Oh, I've got a book here. So that's where the book came from. But if you read my book, people often say they can hear me talking because I write as I talk. Right. So shamanism, that's the kind of context of this medicine wheel teaching, which is our attempts to reclaim indigeneity, the way indigenous people related to the world. That's something we've lost in many ways. Maybe the main way we've lost it is that we see the earth as a thing and we forget to be grateful to her. The indigenous worldview is pretty universal worldwide. That's why I kind of trust it. It's how people didn't need to be taught this. It doesn't come from a book. They don't have holy men. They don't have founders. They just have the natural world and how they relate to it, an inspirited and alive natural world. And that's universal wherever you go. So I trust that. There's just something in me that goes, yeah, I want to know more about that. And the medicine wheel will show us how to be indigenous, how to live in that balanced way with the world. I mean, we talk about wholeness. Indigenous people talk about living in balance. In a way, it amounts to the same thing, but for them, the self is more relational. You don't exist in isolation from the rest of the world and from everywhere else. We emphasize the autonomous free self with all its rights and everything like that. And okay, there's something in that, but we lose that sense of, well, we are relational. We are part of this vast thing, and we need to live in balance with it, to be in balance with ourselves. So yes, shamanism is this broad attempt to reclaim indigeneity. And so I see the medicine wheel in that sort of context. For me, I also do energy work, if you like. The spirits speak through me or embody me. Yeah. Something works through me physically. I become this thing, this bear, this serpent, this sometimes a woman, a female spirit come through me. And it's ecstatic, it's delightful. And sometimes I will do healing work for people on that basis. That's another kind of side of this work, which I'll probably talk about in the West. So let me just think for a moment. Have I said all that I need to say for this session? Maybe I have. We've been going for 25 minutes. Maybe that's enough for now. As I say, please get your 4 stones, come into a relationship with them, talk to them, treat them as though they're sacred. Sacred, that's not bowing down and being holy and getting all stiff and whispering. Sacred is about when you come into relationship with that which has the highest value for you, that which has the most value for you. And that doesn't exclude humor and play. We get very serious when we come to spirituality, whereas it's much more part of life for Indigenous people. You might have children running in and out of your ceremony. You might have lots of jokes and laughter going on. And so I hope this course can have that sort of spirit to it. So yeah, have your medicine wheel. It is sacred. Treat it with care. Treat it like a special friend, but also be light, be humorous around it, and enjoy it. And maybe take a week or so before you come on to the next one, so that you can establish a relationship with it. Good. Okay, that'll do for now, and I'll see you next time.